and welcome to the Visionary Chronicles. I appreciate your time being with me today. Hopefully, you'll find today's episode a special one because it clearly is, and it's something that we all deal with, if not on a weekly, monthly, yearly, daily basis. We feel fear. And so I'm going to talk about not only personally and professionally, but also about fear and how to really lead through it faithfully and courageously. And it's a really special episode, and I hope you feel the same today. So today, again, welcome to the Visionary Chronicles. We're going to dive into one of the most common, interesting enough, yet challenging aspects of leadership that, interestingly enough, not a lot of people talk about. But I feel, having been an entrepreneur myself and continue to be an entrepreneur, and also being with iconic brands and companies, I find that faith and courageousness is one of those things that not a lot of people talk about. And it's a challenging aspect of leadership, leading through adversity while facing our deepest fears. That's what I want to talk about today. And whether you're leading a company, a team, a family, or just simply trying to lead your own life with purpose, fear is an adversary we all face, every leader, and we have to confront it on a daily basis. So I call this episode, it's really based off of faith and courageousness, and I call it Fear Not: How to Lead Faithfully and Courageously Through Adversity. So want to talk about this fear that's really universal. And I love one of the adages I'd heard quite a long time ago was, fear, the definition of fear is F, false, E, evidence, A, appearing, R, real. False evidence appearing real. I thought, what a great definition of what fear is not, or where it should be in your life. It doesn't discriminate based on your position, your experience, or your success. All of us face it. CEOs face it. Entrepreneurs face it, parents face it, middle managers face it. The question isn't whether you'll encounter fear. It's how you'll respond when fear comes knocking at your door. Will you let it paralyze you, or will you lead faithfully through your fear? And there's a great Bible verse that I love, and it's one that's anchored in my daily prayers, is, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1, verse 9. The visionary leaders we admire the most, the ones that I profile in my book, the visionary leader, they weren't necessarily always fearless, but they were always faithful. They felt fear, but didn't let it have the final word in their life. And that's what I loved about the visionary leader that I wrote the book on, was profiling all of these visionaries and the challenges that they faced on a daily basis. I just talked about it last week with Nikola Tesla, that they all leaned on their faith every day of their life. They led through their adversity with courage, wisdom, and conviction. In doing so, they changed their organizations, their industry, and ultimately their lives. And I love talking about this because not enough people do. I had these challenges, and you continue to have these every day of your life. And there haven't been a CEO, leader, a visionary that I've ever met, talked to, read up on, or been a part of an organization where faith wasn't part of the anchoring principle. And all the visionary leaders I profile in my book have strong foundational faith. And I feel it's something this time of year we need to really talk about because of the challenges that we face as leaders, that you face as leaders, how to overcome adversity. You're the one at the front of the gate. You're the one that has to carry the passion. You're the one that has to carry the vision. So as modern leaders, we face different challenges: economic uncertainty, organizational upheaval, technological disruption, AI, personal setbacks, health crisis, relationship struggles, and the weight of responsibility for those that we lead. But the principles of faithful leadership through adversity remain timeless. I profile visionaries all the way back to Jesus, to Socrates, to Aristotle, all the way up to Steve Jobs and Elon Musk of the day. And they've all had the same challenges, interestingly enough, and all of them always lean back on their faith. A higher power than them themselves can take. So today we'll explore how to lead courageously when everything in you wants to retreat, how to make wise decisions when fear clouds your judgment, and how to inspire others even when you're struggling with your own doubts, which we do. So, what is the nature of fear in relationship? I often ask that question, how does it come about? How do we deal with fear? Everybody deals with fear differently. People internalize, I find, or they externalize it. Fear in leadership often expresses in ways we don't immediately recognize. It's not always the obvious panic or terror. Sometimes fear disguises itself as perfectionism, shielding yourself, the inability to move forward because nothing feels good enough. It's the inability to make decisions because of the fear of failure. Sometimes it shows up as control, micromanaging every detail because we're afraid of what might happen if we let go. Sometimes fear appears as procrastination, not knowing what to do, so you just don't do anything. Avoiding difficult decisions or conversations because we're afraid of the consequences. Failure is hard, but without risking failure, you can't succeed. That's the oxymoron that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So why it's so important that we talk about this, that for leaders, fear often centers around specific concerns. Fear of failure and how it will reflect on our leadership to others. Fear of letting down those who depend on us, both personally and professionally. Letting down your family, letting down your team, letting down your company. Fear of making the wrong decision with significant consequences. Fear of inadequacy. The nagging voice that says you're not qualified or capable enough. All of these things, fear of the unknown and what challenges tomorrow might bring, fear of criticism, judgment from others. All of these things are compilations of fear, and why it's so important to figure out a way as a leader how to address fear. Fear of success and the increased responsibility that it brings. And Scripture addresses this reality head on for those who want to be inspired through Scripture. In Timothy 1, verse 7, Paul writes, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind." This verse reveals something really critical to current day leaders. When we lead from a place of fear, we're not operating at our best. That's critical. Instead, we need the power to act, to love, to connect with others, and a sound mind to make wise decisions on a daily basis. And fear blocks us from doing that. The truth is, really, fear often feels protective. Our brains are wired to keep us safe, and fear is the alarm system that triggers it. But what keeps us physically safe can hold us back from the growth and breakthroughs we need to make as leaders. Faith doesn't mean we won't feel afraid. It means we act despite our fear, trusting that which we're capable of handling more than our fear suggests. And let me give you just some examples. And I feel this is really important because when you look back on leadership over the years and generations, Some people that you inevitably think, well, all they've had in their life is success. So you're not alone if you have fear. And I try to overcome this fear with the leaders that I work with Liquid Mind on our advisory council, our one-to-one meetings, and the sessions that we have with CEOs, managers, whoever it may be, that seem paralyzed by fear and can't make decisions. I find a lot of times giving them examples of those that they feel are, and they are successful. But in the very beginning, they had to overcome and face their fears. And Howard Schultz and Starbucks is a great example. In 2008, let me give you an example. In 2008, Howard Schultz returned as CEO of Starbucks during their financial crises. Can you imagine coming back to a company, similar to what Steve Jobs did at Apple when they were on the verge of bankruptcy, literally weeks away from bankruptcy? Schultz came back to a company that was closing hundreds of doors. Stock price had plummeted. The morale was at an all-time low. Schultz faced immense pressure and fear about whether he could turn around the company he'd built. But Schultz didn't lead from panic. He didn't walk in that door and let fear paralyze his decision-making to turn this company around. He made the bold decision, if you remember, to close all 7,100 U.S. stores for an afternoon to retrain the baristas in the stores on making perfect espresso, prioritizing quality and culture over short-term revenue. And he faced massive criticism from Wall Street as a result of doing that. But Schultz understood, as you should, that returning to their core values was essential, and why we always talk about foundational anchoring of foundational principles for companies and a vision that does not change. He also made the controversial decision to maintain health benefits for employees when cutting costs seemed the necessary thing to do. And he later wrote about those dark days, and I find it interesting, admitting that he was terrified but chose to lead with his values intact, meaning that if it meant that he was going to move away from his principles, the values he had built Starbucks on, that he was willing to go down with the ship. He told town halls, listened to employees, made difficult decisions, stayed true to the Starbucks mission and vision. The company, as a result of this decisions and commitment and passion around the values you had anchored Starbucks in, not only survived, but it thrived to where it is today. So the lesson coming out of this for you as a leader is that in times of crisis, anchor yourself in your core values and make decisions that align with them. Even when fear tempts you towards short-term fixes that compromise your integrity. Another one is Satya Nadella and Microsoft. When Satya became Microsoft's CEO in 2014, the company was really struggling with a toxic internal structure, missed opportunities in mobile, and declining relevance in the marketplace and market share losses. So Satya faced the fear of, let's just say, leading a struggling tech giant. Most people think, boy, he's got it pretty easy jumping into a company that's been generational with their success. But that was past tense when he arrived at the company. And he was really competing against way more innovative companies, so he had to play catch up. And he also had to keep a culture intact or build the culture of where the company should be going. So rather than trying to be aggressive like the competitive leader Microsoft was at the time, back in the day, during the Bill Gates days, Nadella led with empathy and a growth mindset. He transformed the culture, and I'll say this is a critical story for you to understand as a leader, is that culture builds brands and companies and loyalty with your employees, but also customers. We always talk about lifetime customer value. It's driven through culture and the passion around ensuring that culture stays intact. So he transformed the culture from know-it-alls to learn-it-alls. He admitted past mistakes, encouraged experimentation, and focused on collaboration rather than internal competition. He made bold bets on cloud computing to this day with Azure that are a success beyond his belief when others doubted him. But he had a vision. He knew where he needed to take it. But he admits to having fear with these decisions. Nadella's leadership was deeply influenced by personal adversity. His son was born with cerebral palsy, teaching him empathy and perspective. He brought that humanity to Microsoft leadership, and his employees felt this as he would talk. He was authentic. I talk a lot about being authentic as a leader. You can't fake it. Writing in his book, Hit Refresh, about how personal challenges shaped his personal leadership philosophy. And that's why I feel it's so important we talk about this. Because fear is something that not only paralyzes you, but it damages relationships. Unless you learn a way to faithfully and courageously overcome it. And under his leadership, since then, Microsoft's market value has quadrupled. And so what is the takeaway from his story for you as a leader of your company brand that is facing this fear? Your personal adversities can become your greatest leadership assets. All of us have had personal challenges. The empathy, resilience, and perspective, I call it elephant skin. You get skin as thick as an elephant, you've overcome anything. And you gain a personal perspective from these struggles that really transforms how you lead professionally. That's the lesson from Satya. And then there's another great story on faith and leadership with Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx with $5,000 in savings and an idea. She faced, this isn't anything she took over. This was something she had an idea on and how to make it a success. So she really faced countless rejections from manufacturers, had no formal business training. She was a woman entering into a male-dominated industry. The fear of failure for her was constant. She was investing her life savings with no guarantee of success. And I often say the word entrepreneur is thrown around very loosely. And I always say start with nothing and make something as an entrepreneur. It's not you having something and making more, you're an entrepreneur. I'm not saying you're not successful, but don't kid yourself as an entrepreneur. It's getting up off the ground and having the ability to run, not running and then running faster. So she truly was the epitome of entrepreneurship. And her father, who was a great inspiration for her, and I love what her father told her. He told her to reframe failure by asking at dinner, what did you fail at today? Not what did you succeed at today? If she hadn't failed at something, he'd be disappointed because it meant she wasn't trying hard enough. So this goes back to the original anchoring principle I've talked about many times in the Visionary brand book, is success without failure is not reality, and safe is risky. The mindset helped push her through fear. Through her father, she cold called manufacturers, she wrote her own patent, sold their product door to door, and then eventually, when Oprah named Spanx a favorite thing, Blankley was so terrified she couldn't fulfill the sudden demand. So it goes from having nothing to having something. But when having something is, I don't know how to fulfill orders. But instead of freezing, she got creative, calling in family members to help package orders from her apartment. Blakely became the youngest self-made female billionaire, not millionaire, billionaire, but more importantly, she built a company culture that celebrates trying, failing, and learning. So, what's the lesson from this story? So, what you need to do as a leader is reframe your leadership with failure. It's not the opposite of success, it's a stepping stone to it. Let me repeat that. What you need to do is reframe your relationship with failure. It's not the opposite of success, it's a stepping stone towards it. So create environments where taking intelligent risks is celebrated, even when they don't work out. That's critical to loyalty with your team. So what does personal leadership through adversity look like? I get that question often as well, is that, I go home at night and, I always talked about I'd started a ministry at Saddleback Church, and it was built off the foundation of helping entrepreneurs, not only personally, but professionally. I ran it for 5 years. And all of the stories I have is, thankfully, you have a ministry that addresses the problem of entrepreneurs, not professionally, but personally. I have to take this home with me every night, and I don't know how to deal with it. So leadership through adversity isn't just about business. It's deeply personal. Consider these real-world scenarios some leaders have faced. I know of a leader who was facing a serious illness. So imagine being diagnosed with cancer while leading a growing organization. That fear is paralyzing and overwhelming. Fear for your health, fear of letting your team down, fear of showing weakness, fear of your family's future. Yet, some of the most powerful leadership happens in those moments. One CEO had shared his experience of continuing to lead through cancer treatment. He was transparent with the board senior team about his diagnosis and prognosis as a result of his cancer. He delegated more than ever before, discovering his team was more capable than he had given them credit for. He worked when he had energy and rested when he needed to, modeling healthy boundaries that the doctor had recommended to him. He spoke openly about his fears and faith, deep-rooted faith on a daily, hourly, minute basis, creating deeper connections with employees who were facing their own struggles so he could relate and give advice. His leadership through personal crisis taught his organization that humanity and vulnerability aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. Productivity actually increased because people felt more empowered by this. When he returned to full health, thankfully, he led a transformed organization with a more sustainable, people-centered culture as a result. So, let's say, what's the lesson you can take away from this story? Your vulnerability and personal adversity can create deeper trust and stronger teams. Don't hide your humanity. It's what makes your leadership authentic and relatable to others. Super important. And we had another that led through financial crisis. So consider the entrepreneur who built a successful business only to watch it nearly collapse during the economic downturn. And some of you out there are actually facing that. Orders dried up, payroll was uncertain, the business line of credit was maxed out, the fear of losing everything, the business, the house, the ability to provide for family was constant on their mind. The leader I'm talking about describing here woke up at 3 a.m. every night in a cold sweat, running worst case scenarios of what might happen. But instead of paralysis, he took action. He got tired of this on a day-to-day basis. He had honest conversations with his spouse about their finances and made a plan together. He was transparent with his team about the challenges, asking for their ideas and their patience as he worked to save the company. He renegotiated contracts, found creative revenue streams, and made painful cuts only after exhausting every other option. He took action. What got him through wasn't just business acumen, it was a decision to anchor himself in faith, which he said was the key to his success. A higher power that allowed him to gain strength through wisdom, seeking wise counsel, and remember his why Why is he doing this? Family, friends, team members, company. He kept a journal of small wins and evidences of this provision that he was receiving. He surrounded himself with other business owners who survived similar crises. And that's why I like to talk about this, is that surrounding yourself with others who have been through this is critical. People just giving their advice that have never been through this is of no help to you if you're going through this crisis or you have this fear issue. But slowly the business stabilized and eventually thrived. More importantly, he emerged as a more grounded, grateful, and wise leader to his team, family, and everyone around him. So, what's the lesson you can take away from this one? It's really financial fear is one of the most primal fears that we all face. But you need to combat this with transparency, community, and a focus on what you can control rather than what you can't. The next is a leader that has a relationship breakdown, personally or professionally. And I always say this, which is very important and why I started the ministry at Saddleback Church, was this happens at home too. Leadership happens at home too. Consider the leader whose marriage is falling apart while he's supposed to be inspiring confidence at work. And many of you face this. Keeping the happy, confident, passionate smile at work, but then crumbling when you get home. The fear of failure, of hurting his children, of public embarrassment, of starting over was a crushing blow to him every day. Yet this crisis became a turning point. He made the difficult decision to be honest with his executive team, taking a brief leave to focus on his family. The importance of family. What are your priorities as a leader? He got counseling. He did the hard work of examining his own contributions to relationship problems. He established better boundaries between work and home, whether the marriage was ultimately saved or not. He learned valuable lessons about priorities, authentic masculinity, and what success really means to a person. Success isn't just money. It's not revenue. Success is having an authentic relationship with your family, friends, and team members. Leaders who navigate personal relationship with integrity often become emotionally intelligent, empathetic leaders in their organizations, ones that are built off a humility principle. They understand that people are whole beings, not just employees. They create cultures where work-life balance isn't just a buzzword, but a lived reality. Okay, my takeaway on this is, don't do this before it's too late. Make sure that you have a system in place that rewards employees for failure, that allows employees the comfort level to balance time with family and friends in addition to their workload. And what's the takeaway on this is professional success means nothing if you lose what matters most. Leading faithfully means really making tough choices about priorities, even when it comes to you professionally in the short term. And what are some practical principles that we could talk about for leading faithfully through adversity? What does this look like? How do we practically apply these lessons to our modern leadership challenges? People often say that. The Bible has great verses and great leadership principles, but how do I apply this? So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this, is that, I wanted to put together some key strategies for leading faithfully when fear really threatens to overwhelm us both personally and professionally. So first is, anchor yourself in truth and values. Before you face daily challenges, ground yourself in what's true and what matters most to you. Ask yourself, Steve Jobs used to, every morning, is what I'm doing today going to make a difference? What are your core values? What kind of leader do you want to be versus who you are today? What legacy do you want to leave? Write these down. I do not want you to use a computer. I want you to get pen and paper and a quiet time alone and write them down. What legacy do you want to leave? What kind of leader do you want to be? And what are your core values? When fear tempts you to compromise these values for short-term relief, These anchors will hold you steady. As it says in Philippians 4, verse 8, encourages. Focus your thoughts on what is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and admirable. That's an anchor in tough times. And what you'll want to do is be able to look back on what happened when you leaned on your faith in these situations. So I want you to start creating a personal record of past challenges that you've overcome. Keep a folder of these physical successes, writing them down, challenges that you were facing and how you overcame these. Testimonies, positive feedback, evidence of your capability. When fear whispers in your ear, which it will all the time, you can handle this. Pull out your evidence file. Remind yourself that you faced hard things before and you've survived these. You've solved problems. You've grown through adversity. This time will be no different. Surround yourself with a trusted circle of friends. No leader should face adversity alone. Build a trusted circle of mentors, peers, friends you can speak truth and encouragement when you're struggling. Meet with them regularly, not in just crisis. Proverbs 15, verse 22 reminds us plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. And the next is take the next faithful step in your journey. You don't need to see the entire staircase, as Martin Luther King Jr. said. Just take the next step. When facing overwhelming challenges, break them down into smaller, manageable actions. Ask yourself, what's the next faithful step I can take right now? Then take it. Momentum builds courage. After you step forward, you'll find a path that becomes clear. Progress, not perfection, is the goal. Lead with transparent authenticity. You don't have to pretend you're not afraid. Be transparent with people. The strongest leaders are those who can say, I'm scared, but here's what we're going to do. Honest leadership. And this was Howard Schultz from Starbucks. That acknowledges struggle while demonstrating determination is more inspiring than fake courage. When you're honest about your challenges while demonstrating your trust and commitment, you give others permission to be real about their own fears, and trust is built. Focus on your mission, not criticism from others. Fear often intensifies when you're overly concerned with others' opinions. When you're clear about your mission and who you're serving, a fear of criticism loses its power. You can't please everyone, but you can be faithful to your calling and your commitments. Make decisions based on your values and mission, not on avoiding criticism. And practice self-care consistently. Prayer, reflective, exercise, rest, and healthy relationships aren't optional for leaders facing adversity. They're essential. They're a core part of your daily routine. These practices aren't indulgences. They're the means by which you stay healthy and effective for you, your team, your family. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. Schedule these practices into your calendar with the same priority as important meetings. So, what are some leadership lessons leading faithfully through fear? Let's just take a look at a few of these principles and practical leadership applications that you can do today. And you can implement these immediately. Number one is acknowledge fear without being controlled by it. Great leaders don't deny fear, they acknowledge it while refusing to let it dictate their decisions. Create space to name fears honestly before God and trusted advisors, then consciously look to choose faith over fear. Ask yourself, what would I do if I weren't afraid? Then do that thing. One CEO I know keeps a journal where he writes his fears on one page and counters them with truth on the facing page. This practice helps him see clearly when making decisions. Lead from your values, not your circumstances. Your leadership isn't defined by your current challenges, but by your core values and character. When circumstances scream one message, anchor yourself in your principles. Write down your top 5 values and post them where you can see them daily. Make decisions based on principles, not panic. When fear tempts you towards reactive, not responsive decisions, pause and consult your principles. What are your core values? That's why you wrote those down. What would the leader you inspire to do in this situation do? What would serve your people best long term, both personally and professionally? One executive uses a 24-hour rule. For fear-based decision, he waits 24 hours before making a decision, which I think is great. When he's feeling anxious or panicked, this cooling off period allows him to move forward with a response to the reaction. Model courage by taking action despite the fear. Your team is watching how you respond to adversity. When you take action despite fear, you give others permission to do the same. Courage is contagious. Start with small acts of courage and build experience and inspire others. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's actually taking action despite the fear. Create a culture where failure is a teacher, not a terminator. Fear of failure paralyzes innovation and growth. Build an environment where people can take calculated risks, knowing that failure is part of their learning process. Celebrate the lessons learned from failures. Hold failure-forward meetings where teams share what didn't work and what they learned from it. That's the objective with failure, is learn from your failures. Thomas Edison learned 9,999 ways not to invent a light bulb until he hit 10,000 where he did. When leaders openly discuss their own failures and lessons learned, it creates a psychological safety for others to attempt great things without fear. And this is a big one, is that investing in your personal foundation daily. You can't lead from an empty tank. Your car won't go anywhere without gas. So prioritize your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health above your leadership responsibilities at all times. This isn't a selfish thing, by the way. It's strategic. Block time for exercise, prayer and meditation, reading, relationship. Protect this time fiercely. As one later put it, if I don't take care of myself, I'm not serving my team, I'm stealing from them by showing up as a depleted, ineffective leader. So don't be one of those ineffective, depleted leaders. And remember that strength often comes from weakness. You don't have to be strong enough on your own. Some of the most powerful leadership happens in those that I profile in the Visionary Leader book. Admit we don't have all the answers. You're humble. Invite others to contribute. As 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9 reminds us, God's strength is made perfect in weakness. Your limitations create space for others to shine and for you to grow. Stop trying to be self-sufficient and instead become interdependent with your team. That's the ultimate leadership goal, is to become interdependent with your team. The 7 habits of highly effective people, that's the anchoring principle. So when fear wins, let's just look at some navigating step backs and starting again. So let's be honest, sometimes fear does win. Sometimes we make decisions from panic rather than peace. Sometimes we retreat when we should advance. Sometimes we let fear silence our voice when we should speak up. What then? What do we do then? The beauty of grace is that failure is never final for those who are committed to growth. Every leader, and this is growth professionally and personally. You need both of these as a leader. Every leader you admire has failed. The difference is they didn't stay down. They got back up, learned from experience, and tried again. When fear wins a battle, remember, you haven't lost the war. It's just a battle. Acknowledge what happened. Take responsibility where you can. Learn from the experience. What triggered the fear? What could you do differently next time? What support do you need? Then forgive yourself and move forward, as all of these leaders have done. Some of your greatest leadership lessons will come from moments when fear won. It's not in your greatest successes, it's in your greatest failures where you learn the most. One CEO shared a biggest failure launching a product that flopped unbelievably. It taught him more about his success through failure than anything he'd ever done. It taught him to test assumptions, to listen to customers, to move quickly but not recklessly, and to be humble. That's what I find the biggest thing with great visionary leaders is they're humble. They give credit to their team. They build loyalty with their team and a foundation of trust with their team. The failure became the foundation for his next success. So let's not waste failures. Let them become the foundation for greater wisdom and more compassionate leadership to others and give them the freedom to fail. Leaders who have failed and recovered are often the most empathetic leaders you'll find. The most wise and the most trusted because they understand struggle comes from the inside. Those that have never failed have never had success. I can almost guarantee you that. So don't feel bad about success. Know it's part of your journey to success. So in a closing reflection, let me give you a little bit of what I call this invitation to faithful leadership, let's call it. So as we close, we'll remind you of something critical. You don't have to be perfect to lead faithfully. We've found that out. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be fearless. You don't have to be willing to show up. You don't have to do the next thing right and to lead with integrity even when it's hard. You have to do all of these things. You don't just have to be fearless. You just have to be willing to show up, to do the next right thing, and to lead with integrity when it gets hard. Your inadequacy is not a disqualification from being a visionary leader. It's an invitation to depend on God, a higher power, and others. Your fear is not a sign of weak faith or weak leadership. It's really an opportunity to exercise greater courage. Your adversary is not a punishment. It's really often a platform for the greatest growth and impact in your life. The world needs leaders who will lead faithfully through adversity. Your family needs you to lead with courage. Your team needs you to lead with authenticity. Your community needs you to lead with hope. And you have everything you need to do this: your values, your experience, your support system, and your faith. Use it. So, when fear comes knocking, and it will, remember you are in whose you are. Remember past victory, remember your values, remember your mission, take that next faithful step, lead with courage, trust with confidence, and watch as you accomplish more than you ever thought possible. And finally, Isaiah 41 verse 10 gives us this promise, which we can apply to everyday life. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. It's a powerful verse. And many leaders that I know of have this on their desk. So you're not alone. You will find strength. You will get help. You will be upheld. Lead faithfully through your adversity, knowing that every challenge you face is shaping you into a stronger, wiser, more compassionate leader. So thank you again for this special episode and that I'm so passionate about, and allowing me to take some of your time to listen to it. So thank you for joining me on the Visionary Chronicles. Until next time, be strong and courageous. Fear not, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd really encourage you to get a copy of The Visionary Leader, where we profile many of these visionary leaders and the faith that they have also had through their fears. It's available now wherever books are sold. Perfect companion for you looking to reignite your purpose or lead with more clarity in this super complex world that we live in. And as a thank you to my loyal podcast listeners, the ebook is still $1.99. And I felt that would be a good price to extend the reach. And that's really what's most important to me. Although a bestseller, the most important to me is having the biggest reach and impacting the most visionary leaders out there who are looking for advice like hopefully we've given today. So again, your support means the world. Your purchase goes a long way towards putting this in the hands of true visionaries and helping us spread the vision even further. So the Visionary Chronicles, where the future is created by those who are bold enough to shape it. Until next time, keep innovating. Please keep leading, keep the faith, and keep shaping the future. Thank you for your continued support, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. So stay true, stay authentic, be different, and be great. But most importantly, enjoy your journey along the way.